Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are back with the August 18th transcript for the United States versus Kelly, McDavid, and Brown, not Browned, Brown. And I believe the police officer from the Chicago Police Department Special Victims Unit is still on the stand. But before court gets started, they have a few things that they have to discuss, I believe, before the jury comes in. And I'm not going to give names because some people ask me not to give their names, but I want to thank those of you, and you know who you are, who have donated so that we have been able to get these transcripts. And if you haven't seen my previous requests, the YouTuber Just Jazz Only has been purchasing the daily transcripts. She gets them the following morning. So they're not available the same day, but the following morning, like 6 a.m., the court reporters are sending her the documents. And so we are making donations to help her pay for the transcripts. And then in exchange, she gives me a copy so that I can do this video. And so if you are interested in making a donation, look in the description, and my PayPal account is there, and you can send the donation to the PayPal. And then, based on the amount of money that is donated, we can send money for, the next day's transcript, or we can send it for, I'll divide it up and send it to, for the next 2 days. It just really depends on how much money comes in, on how many days we can make a donation. And then there was one more thing that I wanted to ask you guys or tell you guys, but I do want to thank those people that have already contributed. And if I can think of what it was, what else I wanted to say, I will talk about it in the actual video. So hold tight, and I will be right back with the transcript reading. Okay, before I get started, I remember what it was that I wanted to mention. So, on the transcripts, they give, all the attorneys' names and where their offices are located and who they are representing, as well as the assistant United States attorneys. And so at the bottom of the page, it says also present Ms. Melissa Sifferman, Homeland Security Investigations. So let me find out, they still investigating, still trying to bring some charges, trying to check for contradictions in testimony, or are they there just to ensure that the people that they have groomed and, rehearsed these lines with actually follow through on what it is that they were supposed to say when they got on the stand. So let's go ahead and jump into this. And we have, before the jury comes in, we have, they clear up the loose ends in testimony. And so the court, which you guys know, is Judge Lennon Weber. And it says the jurors are all here and they're lining up. So they'll be in a minute or two. So come to order. I think the first order is Ms. Bonjean will cross-examine Mr. Everett. So then Bo Brentley, who is the attorney for Darren McDavid, said, Judge, I'm going to cross-examine Mr. Everett first today. And then the judge is like, okay. So then AUSA Jason Julian chimes in and says, Your Honor, this is Jason Julian. Before the jurors come in, there was one thing that I wanted to discuss with you. And it's just a follow-up to what I mentioned yesterday about comments in opening statement. Now, I have the benefit of the transcript, and so me and Miss Bonjean conferred. I don't think she intended anything bad by this. In fact, she told me that she meant for the jurors to perhaps, if they're going to go on social media, that that would be after the trial, so not during the trial. So then the judge said, wait a minute, okay, go ahead, because he probably done forgot about when Jennifer Bonjean almost gave this man a heart attack and said something about them people when they go on social media. And he was like, wait a minute, why are you telling the people to go on social media? So anyway, Mr. Julian says, so what we heard yesterday during opening statement was something about the jurors going on social media. What I'm saying is me and Miss Bonjean spoke, and what she meant by that was that they, after the trial had concluded, go on social media. But the way it came out, and I'll just read you the transcript, Ms. Bonjean said, I should point out that Mr. Kelly, I'm not here to defend his moral character or defend his sexual proclivities when it comes to the amount of partners he has or anything of that nature. Okay, and when you go back to the jury room, eventually, you're not going to be asked to decide whether he is a good or bad person, okay? That's for social media. You can hold those thoughts, and that's something that you can maybe communicate there. So what I'm asking of Your Honor is just to admonish the jurors that they're not to go on social media during the trial. They're not to communicate anything about the trial. So the judge said, I have, and I will do it again after the session. So Julian, thank you, Your Honor. And then the judge, I have, and I will occasionally do that. But I did tell them off the bat that they stay off social media. And then Jennifer Bonjean, and Your Honor, for the record, I have no objection to that. But as you can see from my own words, I was pointing out the exact opposite. Like the jury, the courtroom is not for this. You can hold those thoughts if you want to. I didn't even pick that up, so, and then Bonjean, okay, and judge. I doubt if the jurors did either, but obviously I told them not to, so I don't think they would take that as an invitation to disobey what the judge told them to do so. And then Miss Appenting, who is one of the AUSAs. Your Honor, we just have two, and then the judge, but I will periodically advise them, instruct them again, just in case somebody decides maybe to do that. And then Appenting, Your Honor, and then I think this lady is, Miss Judge is Milton Brown's attorney. And she says, I have one issue, Judge, if I may. Excuse me, you want to go first? Talking to Appenting. And then she says, just briefly, we have two issues. Number one, and I talked to defense counsel about this before this morning, we anticipate that some witnesses today will ID or be asked to ID the defendants. Given the COVID procedures that are in place, everyone has got masks. The government would ask prior to the witness looking around the room if Your Honor would ask everyone in the courtroom to remove their mask. Is that acceptable to the court? And so he says, if it's acceptable to everybody else, just don't breathe on each other. And then she said, we would try not to do that. And then he said, we don't want to lose anybody. And she said, thank you, Your Honor. The other issue is regarding sketch artists. There will be a victim witness testifying today. In our motions in limine, which you granted, there was a note about having the sketch artists anonymize or not sketch the victim witnesses. And so today we are asking before that, at the beginning of the day, I appreciate that the sketch artists are likely in the room right now to be admonished if they are going to sketch the victim witnesses that they anonymize the face and hair. Judge, all right, I will instruct the sketch artists if you wish to sketch these minor witnesses. Child, them people ain't minors. Grown, damn near 40-year-old women, that you obliterate the face like they do on television, okay? And then Appenting, oh, thank you, Your Honor. So then here come Mary Judge with her messy self. Judge, I had one issue. If I may, yeah, go ahead. I talked to the government, and I just want to remind the court that some of their witnesses I would be calling in my case. So I am going to do a cross, and then I am going to go into some open-ended questions. Instead of recalling retired Officer Everett, I'll be asking him questions. And then the judge, is that acceptable? I would hope that we would do that so that to move the case along, so you don't have to recall witnesses, so that the parties, the defendants in this case, would be able to go beyond the direct examination to complete the testimony of a particular witness. Does the government object to that? Mr. Julian, no, we discussed it. That's acceptable, Your Honor. And then he says, fine. So here comes Miss Judge again, trying to be the defense attorney for Milton Brown and a prosecutor for the government with some of these questions that she keep asking that's totally out of line and don't have anything to do with her client and his charges. So she need to just shut up. So she goes on and says, I'm also going to very briefly talk to one Chicago Police Department officer, Everett, and then one federal agent about the process of discovery and disclosure, not for the purpose of suggesting that the government hasn't given us something. I understand that, and I'm not going into that. It's just to briefly educate the jurors about how the defense learns about the evidence in the case. So the judge, as long as you don't indicate that there was any violation of discovery, you can do that, presumably as long as it's relevant. Anything else? That's it. Thanks, Judge. All right. See if they're ready, referring to the jury. So the jury comes in, and then he says, please be seated. Detective Everett may resume the stand for cross-examination. Just to remind the jurors, Detective Everett from the Chicago Police Department, retired, was subject to direct examination last night, and that's where we will pick up with cross-examination with Attorney Brindley on behalf of McDavid. Mr. Brindley, it's a little anticlimactic. Judge, yeah. Detective Everett, you're still under oath from yesterday. Do you understand that, sir? Yes. Okay, you may remove your mask. Mr. Brindley, you may question the witness. Brindley, thank you, Your Honor. Daniel Everett, government's witness previously sworn cross-examination by Mr. Brindley. And guys, remember, so as I'm reading this, at this point, I am not going to keep calling out who's talking. If I'm asking a question, it is Mr. Brindley. If it's just an answer or a statement, then it is the detective, Daniel Everett. Okay? Okay. So we're going to start with the first question, which is Mr. Brindley. Detective, now you said yesterday that back in 2002, you received a VHS video cassette from Jim Derogatis. Is that right? Yes, it is. Derogatis is some kind of reporter, or he was anyway, from Chicago Sun-Times. Is that right? That's correct, yes. Okay, and so in 2002, some 20 years ago, approximately, you watched that VHS video, right? Yes, I did. Okay, now, you testified yesterday that Monday, this week, Monday, August 15, 2022, you watched the video that the government provided, right? Yes. Okay, so there has been some 20 years approximately between the time that you watched Jim Derogatis' VHS cassette and the time that you watched the video provided by the government, right? Yes. Now, you said that the video you saw yesterday, you recognized the content as being the same as you had seen 20 years ago. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Okay, now we just established, and I just want to be clear, that what you got from Jim Derogatis was actually a physical cassette tape, right? Yes, it is. Okay. No, it was a DHS tape, yeah. And I think it should be VHS. And then Brindley says, no, what you got from Jim Derogatis himself, a VHS, you mean, right? Yeah, a VHS. Okay, you got a VHS video cassette tape from Jim Derogatis, and it had to be put in a VCR to open to watch it, right? Yes. What you watched with the government on Monday and then again on Tuesday, Monday and Wednesday, was a disc, right? Yes, it was. So what you were shown yesterday in court was a disc, right? Yes. It was not a VHS video cassette, was it? No, it wasn't. Okay, and you do not know specifically when the disc you saw this week was made, do you? No, I don't. Okay, and you did not ever get the opportunity to watch the disc that you were provided and then watch the VHS cassette in a VCR to determine if they were indeed exactly the same, did you? No, I did not. Okay, and so you do not know if there is a difference in terms of the exact amount of time between the disc you were shown and the VHS video cassette that came from Jim Derogatis, correct? I'm not sure I understand your question. Well, there's a time duration for each video. The tape that you got back 20 years ago and the disc you saw this time, right? Yes. Okay, and you didn't have an exact running time from the VHS Derogatis video. You didn't have a running time memorialized for 20 years, did you? No. Okay, so then when you watch the disc, you don't know if the running time on the disc is exactly the same as the running time on the Derogatis video, correct? I'm not sure what you mean by running time. The amount of time it takes, the exact amount of time to watch the video, the number of seconds and minutes. Dang. Okay, I do not know exactly, no. Okay, and you didn't know whether there are any differences in pixelation, for example, the number of pixels in the video on this disc you received and the VHS tape from Derogatis. You don't know if there are differences like that, do you? No, I don't. You don't know if there are differences in resolution between the disc you received and what you saw on the Derogatis tape, do you? No, I don't. You don't know if the video disc that you were shown now was enhanced in any way from whatever videotape you saw from Derogatis 20 years ago, do you? It does not appear to be, but no. Technically, you don't know, right? No. And you don't know the disc that you got, you don't know how many times the content on that disc had been copied and recopied before you saw it, do you? No, I don't. Okay, and so you don't know if there are any differences between the electronic content of the disc you saw this week and the VHS tape you watched 20 years ago, do you? No. And in fact, detective, you don't know. Well, let me ask it to you a different way. When you were with the government and they gave you this disc to look at, did they ever show you the actual VHS tape that came from Derogatis? No. Did they ever give you an opportunity to look at a VHS tape and say, yes, that's the tape I got from Jim Derogatis? No. So as you sit here today, detective, the real tape that actually came from Jim Derogatis some 20 years ago, you don't know where that one is, do you? I do not know. Okay, and in your meetings with the government to prepare your testimony, they were never able to show you any such video cassette, were they? No. Okay, now I'll talk to you a little bit more about some of your interactions with the family of the this individual that we're calling Jane, but whose real name is Rashona, for our purposes here in court. So what happened was, as I understood it, you got an anonymous tip, right? An anonymous call was made. Yes. Okay. And what that means is somebody called and made an allegation about Mr. Kelly and some underage girl. But the person who called didn't want to leave their name, right? Right. Okay. And so based on this nameless allegation, you did your job, which was to go out and find out if there was anything to it, right? Yes. And what you do in a situation like that is you try to speak to the individual in question and the individual's family, if you can, right? That's right. And let's stick a pin here for a second, because was caller ID star 67, was all that out back there in, what was that, 2000? I think it was. Because I find it interesting that they didn't ask, did they document the phone number of the person that was calling? And did they try to trace the phone number to see who the phone number belonged to? Or maybe it was one of those anonymous hotlines where they don't try to find out who the person is. They just follow up on the information. So, and what you do in a situation like this is you try to speak to the individual in question and the individual's family, if you can, right? That's correct. All right. And so you did that very thing, right? Yes. The first time you did it, did you say it was when in 99 or 2000? 2000, December of 2000, right? Correct. Okay, so you went to the home of the individual, Roshana, right? No, you met them somewhere else. Yes. Okay. Wherever you met them in December of 2000, you asked for specifically whether there was any, you asked her specifically whether there was any kind of inappropriate relationship between her and the musical artist Robert Kelly, right? I did. Okay, and she said in several different forms, no, right? That's correct. She denied it completely, right? That's correct. Her mother and father, as I think I understood you, they were also present, right? Yes, they were. And the mother also denied it, right? Yes. The father also denied it, right? Yes. And so as a law enforcement officer listening to what they had to say, you had to find that it was unfounded, right? Yes. Because the information you had based on what they told you led you to believe there was nothing to it, right? Well, there was no evidence to substantiate a crime. Okay. And so then there was a second instance where you went back again. Is that right? You talked to her a second time. No, you did not. No, we were unable to locate her. Okay, so there was a period of time where you were trying to find her, but she was out of town or you couldn't locate her, right? She could not locate her. Okay, who is she? Now, in fact, in March of 2002, later on, you know that the reporting investigators did talk to her again, right? On that particular date, there were interviews done. I did not speak with Roshana, though. You did not? I did not. But you know from your participation in this investigation that in March of 2002, Roshana, mom and dad, again denied it all, right? Yes. Okay, they denied that it was her or could be her on this video that came from Jim Derogatis. Is that right? They did, yes. Okay. At this time, Your Honor, and this is Brinley, he's saying, at this time, Your Honor, I have no further questions for Detective Everett. And then the judge says, Miss Bonjean. And Miss Bonjean said, yeah, I got some questions. So she goes, yes, Your Honor, I have a few. So then we have the cross-examination by Miss Jennifer Bonjean, and hopefully this will be a little interesting here because she has a little flair for doing her little cross-examinations. So she says, good morning, Detective. And he says, good morning. When you were working on this investigation, you were working with the Chicago Police Department, right? Yes, I was. You were a Chicago police detective, correct? That's right. You weren't a federal agent, correct? No, I was not. You were not working on behalf of the federal jurors, any federal jurisdiction, correct? I was not, yes. Now, you testified that on October 24th in 2000, you, or I guess a colleague, received this anonymous complaint that you just mentioned under cross-examination by Mr. Brinley that informed you of information that Mr. Kelly may be having this inappropriate and unlawful relationship with this individual, right? Yes. And after that, the anonymous caller sent you some documents, didn't they? Or didn't she? I'm sorry, the anonymous caller. Okay, y'all, I had to take a phone call real quick, so let me see where I was at. Okay, so Brinley is asking Bonjean is asking the detective, the anonymous caller sent you some documents. Yes, didn't she? And one of those documents was a report prepared by DCFS, right? I don't recall that. Would anything refresh your recollection? I recall receiving documents, but not a report from DCFS. Okay, how about a report by you? Would that refresh your recollection? It would. So Banjin, okay, Judge, I'm going to ask to show only to the witness. And then he cuts her off and says, you may. And then Banjin, Defense Exhibit 315 for identification purposes only. Do we need to switch the input? Law clerk, what computer are you using? Then Ms. Cohen, who is with Jennifer Banjin's law firm, says, it's Defense PC 1. And then the court, is it on video or board? And then Jason Julian, I got it, Judge. And then Ms. Cohen, it says no signal for our computer. Banjin, I have it, it's fine. Judge, may I approach? I don't have to ask. And then he says, you don't need to ask permission to approach. Just give it to him and let's go. I don't know why this man be cutting up in this courtroom. So Banjin, detective, I'm going to ask that you take a look at that report and particularly the second paragraph, if you would, and let me know when you are finished reviewing it. Okay, I'm familiar with this. Okay, does it refresh your recollection? Yes. All right, what is DCF's detective? DCFS is Department of Children and Family Services, mandated to investigate allegations of child abuse. And a DCFS complaint was made on April 17, 2000 in connection with Rishona. Isn't that right? Yes. Okay, that would be before you were assigned to investigate on October 24, 2000, right? I don't believe it was before. I believe it was after. Well, April, it was on the 24th of October. Okay, that's when you got involved, but the DCFS investigation was in April of 2000. That would be before, right? Okay, yes. Okay, and the complaint that was lodged at DCFS was actually made against, or was made against the parents of Rishona. Isn't that right? According to this, yes. And their names were Susan and Brandon, but we know it was Valerie and Greg Landfair. Is that what Brandon? Okay, when I say Susan and Brandon, do you know who I'm speaking about? No. Okay, well, if the government isn't going to tell their witnesses the pseudonyms, it's going to make it a little difficult. And then Jason Julian, you can ask if they're the minor's parents. And then the judge, you're talking about, I don't know, are these the parents? Julian, yes. And then Banjin, okay, if I call them Susan and Brandon, will you understand that I'm talking about the parents of Rishona? Oh, okay, yes. The judge, all right, fine. Banjin. Okay, and this DCFS complaint that was lodged against Susan and Brandon was that was lodged against Valerie and Greg, may he rest in peace, was a complaint that were knowingly allowing their daughter to engage in a relationship with her 33-year-old boyfriend. That was the complaint, correct? That's what I believe, but I was not a member of DCFS. I'm not sure what their exact intentions were. That's not what I'm asking. You became aware of an allegation that was lodged against the parents in April of 2000, right? Yes, I did. And it was after that allegation in October when you interviewed Rishona, right? Yes. And you also interviewed the parents, Valerie and Greg, right? I did. Now, did you recall them up and say, I'd like to interview you, or did you just show up? And how did the interview come about? I believe I called them. I mean, it was our policy to arrange interviews, make an appointment. And I believe we called them. I'm not absolutely certain though. Okay, and when you raised this issue with them, they weren't shocked that you were inquiring about this, right? No. And you found them uncooperative, is that correct? Yes. And Valerie and Greg, they told you that it had already been investigated by DCFS and was unfounded, correct? Yes, they said it's been investigated. And you also concluded it was unfounded, right? Yes. Did you conduct any other investigation after that? At some point we did, yes. Did you speak to a Stephanie Edwards or someone known as Sparkle? Yes. Did you do that before you unfounded the allegation or after you unfounded the allegation? That was after I unfounded this investigation. Okay, so I want to focus on what you did before you unfounded this allegation. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, before we unfounded the investigation, there was very little, if any, contact with anybody. I understand, and I'm going to ask you about that. Okay, did you speak to Sparkle before you unfounded this investigation? Not before I unfounded this investigation, no. Okay, did you try to interview Mr. Kelly before you unfounded this allegation? No. Did you do any investigation other than talking to Rashona and the parents prior to unfounding this allegation? No. Did you make a note anywhere in your records, as far as you know, in which you indicated that you had suspicions or you didn't believe the parents or anything of that nature? I did not. And fair to say that before you unfounded the allegation, it was a single interview with Rashona and her parents, correct? Correct. How long did that interview last, by the way? Approximately half hour, 45 minutes. Now, fast forward to February 1st, 2002-ish. This is when you come into possession of a video that was provided by a reporter, right? Yes. And this is the video. You have no idea where it's at, right? I don't. And it's a video you haven't looked at, correct? Recently, anyway. No. Now, are you able to tell us where it is right now? I'm sorry. Are you able to tell us where that particular video is right now? I don't know where it is. Did you put your initials in it? Are you talking about the disc or the VHS tape? The VHS tape you got from Jim DeRogatis, did you inscribe your initials into it? I did. Do you know where that videotape is? I inventoried it back then with Chicago Police Department. Where it is today, I don't know. Have you seen any videotape with your initials inscribed in it? No. Since you were interviewed by the U.S. Attorney's Office, for instance? No. You then interviewed the parents on March 15, 2002, correct? Yes. And again, they showed up with lawyers, is that right? Yes. You didn't actually get to interview Rashona because they had a lawyer there, right? We had a social worker that we were planning on having interview Rashona, but she wasn't interviewed, right? No, not to my knowledge. And in fact, the only time you interviewed Rashona was on that February 1st when you went to the shoe store in Oak Park, right? Was it a shoe store? Yes, it was a shoe store they owned. Oh, okay, they had a little business there. All right, I believe so. So that was the one and only time you ever spoke to Rashona. Am I right about that? Yes. Okay, now during the course of your investigation, you came into possession of other videotapes that depicted Mr. Kelly in with sexual partners, right? Yes. Okay, and you concluded that these were adult sexual partners? Yes. Okay, and then we got redaction, just pages and pages of redaction. So then the judge says proceed. So I guess somebody called the sidebar. They had to have a meeting that we don't get to know what was said. So Miss Bonjean continues and she says, okay, investigator or detective, I'm going to have to show you a police report, and I'm going to draw your attention to a portion of it so you'll know who I'm talking about. Okay, but I'm not going to use the name associated, okay, if that makes sense. And then the judge, did you ever find his report on the monitor so we didn't have to? And then the law clerk, judge, we're working on that now. Then the judge, all right, is that the report he has or is there another report? Bonjean, it's a different report. Judge, okay, Show him the report. Banjin, okay, it's a long report. I just want to show him the exact paragraph. Then the judge, yes, go ahead. So Banjin, okay, detective, I'm going to show you a report. It's a 19-page document. Yes. And if you can just look at it and generally without telling anybody that's in it, what's in it, can you identify what it is? The judge, the question is what it is. Banjin, do you know what it is? The detective, yes. Okay, what is it, just generally? It's my supplementary report, police report. Okay, supplementary report, police report. Okay, it's a police report, right? Yes. Now, I would like to draw your attention specifically to, well, first of all, page 13 of 18 of this police report. Page 13 of 18. Okay. And I'm going to have you look at, it's right in the middle of the page. It's the second full paragraph. It starts with April 16th of 2002. All right. On that page, are you looking at, okay, wait a minute. Banjin said, all right. Then he said, on what page are you looking at? And then Banjin replied 13 of 18. And then he answered 13 of 18. No, 13 of 18, judge. They had it in the monitor a minute ago, then by the witness. And then he says, can you give me those dates again? And then Banjin, just look at the page 13 of your police report, sir. And then the judge, why don't you show it to him? Okay, and then the witness, I am looking at page 13, and then Banjin, April 16th of 2002 is the second full paragraph. Then the judge, Miss Banjin, why don't you just get it for him? And then Banjin, okay. And then the judge, and just pointed out to him, so what you're talking about so that we, and then the witness says, I don't see April 16th. And then the judge is also on the monitor now. They're getting on this old man's nerves. Banjin, do you have it? Okay. Okay, do you see it? I see it now. Okay. On April 16, 2002, you had the opportunity to speak to, well, first let me show you. In the last sentence, there is where we go. The judge, there we go. Banjin. Is he correcting her? I'm confused. There we go. The judge said, there we go. Okay, Banjin. In the last sentence, there is a person's name that begins, well, I'm not even going to say what it begins with. Do you see a person's name at the first word in the last sentence? I do. Okay, I'm going to call her Pinky. All right. Okay. All right. Now, on April 16th of 2002, did you have an opportunity to talk to Pinky's mother? And you guys, Pinky is one of Rishona's friends that she claimed that she recruited to be a part of her and Mr. Kelly's whatever they had going on. And so the detective says, I did. And did you understand Pinky to be Rishona's friend? I did. And you also had an opportunity to speak with Pinky, isn't that right? Yes. Okay. And Pinky did not tell you about any sexual activity she had with Mr. Kelly, did she? And then Jason Julian, objection, calls for hearsay. Banjin is the opposite of hearsay. Judge, I don't believe it would be. What she didn't do is not hearsay. So, Julian, you're asking about a conversation that the person had with Detective Everett, Your Honor. The judge, well, it depends on what's in the conversation. Well, anyway, let's proceed. Banjin, well, Judge, I prefer not to have to call him back. So, and Pinky is going to testify, so I'll do it that way. However, the court wants me to proceed. Then the judge says he can answer the question. Banjin, okay, Judge, what she didn't say. Banjin, right, that's all I'm asking about. Judge, yeah. So Banjin, okay, Pinky did not tell you she had a relationship with Mr. Kelly, right? Okay, according to this document, this paragraph, no. And you had the opportunity to actually interview Pinky another time. Do you remember that? I did. Okay, and at no point did Pinky ever tell you that she had a sexual relationship with Mr. Kelly, did she? I would have to review my report for the other conversation. Okay, well, we will be able to get that up for you too. Let's look at page. Give me a second. Do you remember interviewing her a second time? I do. You think you would remember if she told you she had a sexual relationship with Mr. Kelly? I cannot recall without reviewing my police report. Okay. Did you open up an investigation into any allegations of a sexual relationship with Mr. Kelly as a result of Pinky's allegations? No, I did not. And if she had told you that she was having sex as a person with Mr. Kelly, you think you might have opened an investigation about that? If who had sex with Mr. Kelly? Pinky. Of course I would have, yes. And you didn't do that, right? No. I'm going to ask you to look at the screen. I don't think it's, and when you're done reading that paragraph, will you let me know? Okay. Judge. The purpose is for refreshing his recollection. Bonjean, right. Judge, okay. Bonjean. Let me know when you're finished, detective. I will. Judge, just to clear the record, this is being admitted not for the truth, but on what caused him to do or not do to something. The witness, I'm finished reading it. Bonjean. Okay, detective, do you remember doing some investigation about another videotape that there was some concerns that it included images of Pinky? No, I do not recall that. Okay, does this refresh your recollection of what that investigation? No, and at no point did Pinky, well, does this refresh your recollection about whether Pinky and her mother were shown images from another videotape? Yes. Okay. And does it refresh your recollection that Pinky and her mother denied that Pinky was involved in any video recorded activities that were portrayed on this videotape? Right. That's correct. All right. You can take that down. Judge, is that it? Bonjean, it is, Your Honor. Judge, Miss Judge, do you wish to ask questions? Miss Judge, thank you, Judge. Here this heifer come, trying to throw. Look, she about to ask some questions that ain't got nothing to do with her client, but here she go. So, question. When you testified yesterday, you talked about Mr. Kelly's residence located at 1010 George Street. Do you remember that? Yes, I did. And you were shown photographs of that residence. Yes. Can you tell us, did you go to each floor, each level of that house that you visited, or when you visited it? I do not recall if I went to each floor. I know I went to more than one level of the house. Can you tell the jurors how many levels were in that house? I don't recall that, at least minimum 2. Do you remember if it was a large or small house? It was mid-size, I would say. Do you know how many square foot? I have no idea. You talked earlier about receiving a videotape from Sun-Times reporter Jim Derogatis, correct? Yes. Can you describe how that took place? Not like physically. Did you physically get that tape from Jim Derogatis? Yes. I was assigned to the Special Investigations Unit, and our commanding officer contacted myself and my partner and informed us that he had received a phone call from Jim Derogatis of the Sun-Times, who was given a VHS tape by, it was dropped off. It was an anonymous person who dropped it off. We then went to the Chicago Sun-Times and met with Mr. Derogatis, who turned the tape over to us. So Jim Derogatis was in possession of the tape and he handed it to you, correct? Yes. Thank you. Throughout this investigation, despite the fact that Mr. Derogatis was in possession of that tape, you never started an investigation or arrested Jim Derogatis for possessing CP, correct? My God. Now, why would they have arrested the man if he telling you somebody sent the tape to him anonymously? He didn't know what it was. He did the right thing. He called the police. This lady getting on my nerves. So the detective said, I did not. And then she said, you've looked at it today, a couple of reports that you've written in preparation or throughout your investigation, correct? Yes, I did. Do you recall how many reports you wrote about this case? Not exactly, no. It was quite a few. Quite a few, and it was quite a few years ago, too. So I know I'm asking you, but you understand the purpose of writing reports for each investigation that you conduct, right? Absolutely, yes. And you understand that the purpose of it is because those reports are going to be used sometimes in a situation like this where someone is on trial. Yes, possibly could be, yes. And those reports are going to be shared with the prosecutor. If there was a prosecutor who pursues the case, yes. And then those reports also oftentimes come to the defense, yes. And were you used in a case just like they were this morning, correct? Yes. Do you remember how many employees of R. Kelly you interviewed, if any? I would say none. Did you learn of any employees of R. Kelly during your investigation? Yes, we were given names of various employees by other witnesses that informed us that worked for Robert Kelly. Was one of those witnesses named Cheryl Cobb? I'm sorry? Was one of those employees named Cheryl Cobb? Yes, it was. And how about an employee named Camille? Yes. Do you remember what Camille's job was? No, I don't. What was the last, if you recall, when did you stop this investigation, or when were you last involved in this investigation? After Robert Kelly was arrested. In what year? 2002. Miss Judge, thank you. I have no further questions. Who is Camille, Mary? Who is Camille? Why did you bring up Camille, Mary? Is Camille going to be one of your witnesses? Oh, child. Anyway, so here come the judge. Redirect any. So, Mr. Julian, no, Your Honor. May the witness be excused. And then the judge said, you can step down. Thank you. Call your next witness, please. Then the witness was excused. And then Miss Appenting, Your Honor, the government calls Matthew Holzinger. Judge, sir, please raise your right hand. The witness is sworn in. The court, when you testify, you may remove your mask, sir. Thank you. You may question the witness, Miss Appenting. Thank you, Your Honor. Matthew Holzinger, government's witness sworn, direct examination by Miss Appenting. Good morning. Over here. Good morning. Good morning. Over here. Good morning. So I guess sis was sitting down. I'm not sure. I gotta look at this picture that I posted of her in the image to see if she's in a wheelchair or something. So anyway, the witness says hi. And she says, can you please state and spell your name for the court reporter? Matthew Holzinger, last name Hulsizer. Thank you. In what city and state do you live? Winnetka, Illinois. Sir, how are you employed? I'm self-employed. And in what business and what industry are you working in? I work in the technology and finance industry. Directing your attention to December of 2001, did you purchase a home then? I did. And what was the address of that home that you purchased? 1010 West George Street. And is that located in Chicago? Chicago? Do you know who the prior owner of that residence was? Yes, well, I do now, Robert Kelly. Did you meet the prior owner, Robert Kelly, at or around the time of the purchase? I don't know, actually. I don't remember. You don't know one way or the other? Yeah. Can you please describe the property? It was a converted church that had a basketball court and a swimming pool and a bunch of other open space. Okay. Can you describe what the exterior looked like? A brick building, an alley on one side. Prior to your testimony today, did you review photos of the exterior and exterior of your house? I did. Or not your house, the house that you purchased back in December of 2001. Yes. And you identified them as such as photos of your prior residence at 1010 West George. Yes. I'm showing you what's already been admitted in evidence as Government's Exhibit 112A. Your Honor, may that be published to the jury, please? What is Government's Exhibit 112A? I thought they were admitted in evidence, Miss Eppington. Yes, Your Honor, it is admitted. Judge, then they can be published then, obviously. Eppington, yes. Okay, what is Government's Exhibit 112A? That is the house at 1010 West George Street. And what are you? There's, okay, and what are the, okay, there's two windows. Do you see, hold on one moment, my cursor pointing here. What is behind these two windows here? What rooms? So that's the entryway, and that's the, behind there is the living room. And this is the front door here, the green door, yep. Now, let's talk about the inside of the home. Can you please tell us about how many floors and rooms there are in the house? So let's see, there's 3 bedroom, bed. So I guess there's 4 levels, and then there's a half drop down to a pool. And then further down into what was we called the Colorado room, which was effectively the basement level below grade. Okay, I'm showing you just to the witness what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 122E. Do you see that there on the screen in front of you? Yes. Is this one of the photos of your house that you viewed prior to your testimony? Yes. And what is depicted in Government's Exhibit 112E? That's the inside of the house at 1010 West George Street. Is that your writing that appears on this photo, this image? Yes. And my signature. And does this truly and accurately depict the interior of 1010 West George in or around December of 2001? Yes. Miss Appington says, Your Honor, we move to admit 112E and publish to the jury. Is there any objection? Bonjean, no objection. Okay, they're admitted. You may publish it. Government's Exhibit 112E admitted into evidence. So Miss Appington continues. Mr. Holzinger, let's start at the top of this photo over here where it says master, kids bedroom. Can you please start to explain the layout of this house? Sure, yes. So at the top it says master. This was before whatever it's called today. Yes, main room, the main bedroom. Yes. Okay, so that's the main bedroom where I slept. Then there's the kids' bedroom is on the next level. Below that, it says bedroom. That is the guest bedroom. The window frame that you see left of the word where your cursor is would have been another bedroom, but was a fish tank. To the right, damn, he said the whole room was a fish tank. To the right is the balcony where my signature is. And then let me stick a pin here. The reason he was asking, what are they calling that bedroom today? Because you know the woke folks say they shouldn't be called the master bedroom. So if y'all around here saying that the biggest bedroom in your house is the master bedroom, y'all need to stop, okay? Because that's racially insensitive. And it is now called the main bedroom. Okay, so we shall continue on. So the question over here, and then he says, yep. As you go down to the next level, this is back there. Where your cursor is was the kitchen. To the right it had been taken out, but was a barber shop when I had purchased the property. Then the street level where I wrote street level this is the living room. So to the left, see where it's labeled pool? You would drop down about 3 or 4 steps to a pool. And then from there, you would drop down a few more steps. It would take you through what was effectively, I would say, maintenance room or storage room. And some of the electronics were in there. And then past that was what we referred to as the Colorado room. And that's what you have written here. Yes. Okay, well, let's start there on that bottom floor that you mentioned, the Colorado room. Can you describe that room? A lot of wood paneling, and there was a hot tub. Okay, we're going to go through a couple of photos of that room and others in your house. But before we do, let's talk about who took those photos. So, in approximately early 2002, did members of the Chicago Police Department come to your home and ask to take pictures of it? Yes. And did you or one of your representatives at that time allow CPD, Chicago Police Department, to take photos? Yes. Did you review some of those photos before your testimony today? Yes. Did you identify the rooms and areas depicted in those photos to be the residence at 1010 West George Street? Yes. Do those photos truly and accurately depict the interior of 1010 West George at the time of the purchase in December 2001? Yes. So back to the Colorado room with the wood walls. I'd like you to take a look at, there is a packet in front of you, Government's Exhibit 12DFGHIJKLMNQRS and T. And those are in that packet right in front of you, and they are in the defense witness binders as well. After you had a moment to review those, just let me know, just the first packet. Okay. Are you finished looking through those? Yep. Are those the photos that we were just talking about, the ones that Chicago Police Department officers took when they came to your house back in early 2002? Yes. Okay, Ms. Appleton, Your Honor, we'd ask that the government would move into evidence Government's Exhibit 112 GHIJKLMNRST into evidence and ask for permission to publish. Judge, any objection? Hearing none, they're admitted. You may publish. Okay, side Government's Exhibit admitted into evidence. Ms. Appleton continues. Okay, for the record, Government's Exhibit 12D, F, and Q are already in evidence by Ms. Appleton. Okay, so let's take a look at Government's Exhibit 112D. Do you see that up there on the screen in front of you? Yes. Okay, and we were talking about the Colorado room, as you mentioned, as you called it, the room in the basement of 1010 West George. So what is depicted here in 112D? That is the Colorado room. Okay, on to the next 112F. What does that photo depict? That's the Colorado room hot tub, just from a different angle. And the right looks like the bathroom. Sorry about that. That's okay. You said in the right looks like the what? I think it was a bathroom. And again, what is 112G? That's the hot tub again. What is depicted in 112H? That's the entrance to the Colorado room that came through what was the mechanical room that I was describing earlier. Okay, and again, is this entire room covered in wood paneling everywhere? Yes, there is some stone on the side too, I believe, but it was mostly wood. Okay, showing you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 112I. What is depicted in 112I? This is the mechanical room that led to the Colorado room. Okay, and when you moved in, was this equipment here? You know, I don't recall. Some equipment, I have no idea. I don't know what I put in and what they did, what was there. So do you recall installing any of this, the keyboard, what it looks like there? I installed some equipment because I had to change some of the stuff that was there. Okay, I don't know what I'm looking at here. I couldn't tell you which one I did or not. It's 20 years ago. Okay, you said you changed some of the stuff that was there. What was there? What was this room used for, and what did you use it for? Banjin, objection, speculation as to what it was used for. Appleton, what was the room? What did you use the room for? Judge, well, he can answer just generally what it's for. I mean, Banjin, no, what it was used before he occupied it. That's my objection. What someone else used it for. Okay, sorry about that. Everybody want to call me today. Okay, so that's my objection. What else? What everyone else used it for. And then the judge, what did he use it for? I guess Banjing, that I don't object to. Judge, all right, let's move on. So Miss Appleton, sir, what did you use the room for? Mechanical. What type of mechanical equipment is in here? Electronics and surveillance and security. Now I'm showing you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 112J. You had mentioned that there were other rooms down in the basement area of the home. Is that right? Yeah, yes. Okay, was a gym one of them? Yes, but it's not connected to the Colorado room. That was in the photo. That was in the back. Understood. So it's what level of the house is it on? I believe it's slightly below grade. Got it. Is this the gym that was at 1010 West? Is at 1010 West George? When you purchased it, it was a gym. Okay, and is that photo that's hanging on the wall, was that there when you moved into the home? Yes, it was. And if you know, do you know who's depicted in the photo? I don't. Can you explain to the jurors what we're looking at in this photo? So this is the room adjacent to the gym. So you would walk out of the gym and you would go into this area, which then came off the living room. Okay, and it looks like there is a black kind of a structure there. What's that? That's a bar. Okay, and that appears here on the wall. That was there when you moved in, is that right? Yes. I'm showing you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 112L. Now, what is depicted in 112L? Again, that was the art of the wall. This is art on the wall at 1010 West George, and it was like this when you moved in? It was. I'm going to ask you to read this scoreboard here. I won't call it a scoreboard. It appears to be a scoreboard to me. Okay, what is this that's on the left side of the board here? It says Home, R. Kelly, 95. And it appears that he's playing the visitor Task D, and he is winning by 2 with 1 second left on the clock in the fourth quarter. And then below that, it looks like there's cartoon characters holding up signs. Do you see that there? Yes. And what do those signs say? Foghorn Leghorn is saying, Go R. Kelly, and I can't see the other character, but it says Go Taz. Okay, is this that same, I guess, mural that's on the wall at 1010 West George? Yes. That was there when you moved in? Yes. And what does it say? You can see the signs. They're still there that you had just read. Are those the same signs you just read? Yes. Okay. And then the final photo here. Again, this is the same mural and the same area that's off of the gym. Is that correct? Yes. Now, let's go to some other areas in the home. Just 2 more. Showing you what's been marked as government's is already admitted into the evidence, but 112Q. Actually, all these are in evidence. What is Government's Exhibit 112Q? That is the main bedroom. I'm showing you what's Government's Exhibit 112R. What is depicted there? That is the main bedroom as well. That's the 180-degree turn from the last photo to looking out on towards the stairwell. So those 2 windows that were in the other photo, those looked out over the inside of the home. Is that correct? The other 2, no, they looked out into the alley. Oh, they looked out into the alley. And this window right here, what does it look out? It looks out toward the stairwell. Okay, now when you moved into the home, did you have any concerns with any security features or anything that was in the home that caused you concern? Yes. What was that? So if you slide your arrow to the right, you will see that there is a button on the wall. And you talking about over here? Yep. In order to exit the bedroom, you had to push the button to release the lock on the door. So we had to disable that. Why did that concern you? Because I had Banjin. Objection to relevance. Lennon Weber. Overruled. Okay, so the witness, I had a, and then Appleton said, go ahead, you can answer the question. Okay, I had a child, so I was a single dad at the time, and I had a child on another level, and I didn't want to get stuck to exit the room. So you're saying you had to press that button in order to get out of the room. You couldn't just walk out. You could not. Okay, are there anything else that caused you any concern when you moved into the house? Yes, when we checked the smoke detectors in the main bedroom, and I believe in other bedrooms they were not functioning smoke detectors. What were they? They were video cameras showing you what's been previously marked as Government's Exhibit 112S. What is depicted there? That's a smoke detector, it looks like. And what's depicted in Government's Exhibit 112T? Smoke detector. Is that one of the smoke detectors you mentioned you were concerned about? Yes. Because it was a camera, not a smoke detector? Yes. Now, moving on to the last room that you'll describe in the house, that's the main floor and the living room area. What did that main floor look like when you purchased the home? What did it look like? Yeah, the main floor. Was it wood? It's wood. Okay. Did it have any particular features on it that you recall? It had a chessboard on it. What color was the chessboard? Black and white. And before you moved in, did you actually notice like checker chess pieces that were in the home? There were, on the walkthrough, there were chess pieces up in the armoire or whatever it was in the room. So yes. What size? Like how big were those? 2.5 feet roughly. Okay, now I'm showing you what's been previously marked as Government's Exhibit 112O and P. And you have those again in the packet that's in front of you. Do you see them there? Yes. And sorry, they're Government's Exhibit 112O and P. Do you see those? Yes. Now, prior, in or around 2019, did you meet with law enforcement and look at some photos and still images that you identified as areas in 1010 West George? Yes. And are those photos Government Exhibits 112O and P? And are those the photos that we're talking about that you reviewed with law enforcement in or around 2019? Yes. And do they truly and accurately depict the interior of 1010 West George on or about December 2001? Yes. Your Honor, we move to admit Government's Exhibit 112O and P. Any objection? Hearing none, they're admitted. You may publish. Government Exhibits 112O and P admitted into evidence. So I'm showing you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 112O. Is this the black and white checker floor that you were talking about that's in the living room? Yes. And you moved that after you moved. And you removed that after you moved. Is that right? Yes. And again, you identified this photo as depicting the interior of 1010 West George. Is that the same room? Yes. The black and white checkered floor? Yes. After you moved into the home, did you allow Mr. Robert Kelly, back into the home for any extended period of time that you can recall? No. Do you know if he was in the Colorado room after you moved out? No. You don't know, or he was not. After I moved out? I'm sorry, after you moved in. I apologize. Oh, after you moved in was Mr. Kelly. Did you allow him to come back into the Colorado room? I did not. And do you know if after you moved in, you allowed Mr. Kelly into the main living room of your home? I did not. One moment, Your Honor. Okay, is that it? A moment, Your Honor. Pardon? Just 1 second, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor, we have concluded with the witness. Okay, who would like to cross-examine? Banjin, I have a few questions. Okay, Miss Banjin, you may question the witness. Thank you, Your Honor. So, the cross-examination. So, good afternoon. Hi, Mr. Holzinger. Am I saying that correctly? Yes. Okay. The pictures that you were looking at were taken in and around, well, 2002, right? Yes. Do you remember what month it was? I mean, it's marked on there, but I don't remember specifically. Okay, this is when the Chicago Police Department came and asked you for permission to photograph the residency, right? Yes. And do you recall how long you had been living there when they asked to do that? It's 20 years ago. I mean, I was there for some period of time. I don't remember exactly. Okay, fair enough. Now, 112Q, you identified as the main bedroom. Do you have it in front of you? Yes. And that was decorated with your furnishings, right? Yes. That's what it looked like when you were living there, correct? Yes. You have no idea what it was looking like when Mr. Kelly was living there, right? In terms of the furnishings, yeah, I do not. Okay, and you don't have any idea how long Mr. Kelly lived in that residence, I'm assuming, right? I don't. And you don't know who owned the residence before Mr. Kelly, correct? I don't. You said when you moved in, you had some concerns. You identified two concerns. One was that you had to press a button to get out of the bedroom, right? Yeah. And what was a concern? Because you had young children and it sounded like you didn't want something to malfunction and then you'd be stuck in your bedroom, right? Yes. Okay. And then you had that removed, right? Do you have any idea whether Mr. Kelly is the person that put that in or the owner before him? I have no idea. Now, you also identified 112T. That's a smoke detector. It looks like a smoke detector right there, right? Yes. You said you found video cameras in it. A video camera, yes. A video camera, yes. Did you find video cameras in any other smoke detector? I don't recall. When did you find the video cameras? Well, I was checking the house because, again, I was a single dad, wanted to make sure that all the smoke alarms worked, and it didn't work because it was a video camera. So that's when we found it. And what did you do with the video camera? I don't recall. What did the video camera look like? I don't specifically recall. It was, well, were you able to determine where the video camera, where the images would have been projecting? I don't, because I didn't use it. And when the Chicago Police Department came to photograph the residence, did you tell them that you had found a video camera in there? I did. Okay, but at the time that they took this picture, it didn't have any video camera in it, right? It didn't. Okay, and again, I assume you checked the other smoke detectors in the house when you moved in, right? Yes. So just so I understand, when you moved in, what was it, December of 01? Yes. You located this video camera and then you tossed it out? I don't recall, probably. Okay. You didn't determine whether it was a functioning video camera, right? I did not. Can you tell me how big it is? How big it was? Small. Okay. And do you remember whether it was operable, or could you determine whether it was operable? I could not. Did you determine whether there was any images on it? No. Okay. And sir, back in, let's see, I guess January of 2019, you called a hotline, didn't you? No. Did you ever? Were you ever aware of a hotline to call in January of 2019 to give information about Mr. Kelly and anything like that? No. Okay, so after the police came to your house in 2002, I guess, was the last thing that you understood about Mr. Kelly, is that right? Yes. Okay, the government asked you whether you ever gave access to Mr. Kelly to the Colorado room. Mr. Kelly didn't ask for access to the Colorado room after he left, did he? No. Bonjean, I have nothing further. Okay, Mr. Brindley, nothing, Your Honor. Miss Judge, nothing, Judge. Thank you. Redirect, Miss Abington, none, Your Honor. Okay, you can step down. We'll take a 15-minute recess at this time. Okay, recess taken. Proceedings heard in open court. The jury is out. Okay, Miss Abington, can you admonish the sketch artist? Judge, put it on the record. This is the next witness is Rishona, And this is the one that when you sketch, if you sketch, do not sketch the facial feature. Okay, thank you. Are there two? Somebody told me there are two. You agreed to not to do that. Is that right, sir? Sketch artist nodded. Judge, thank you. So the jury comes in. Okay, please be seated. Okay, Mr. Williamson, Your Honor, briefly. Okay, Mr. Williamson, Your Honor, briefly. Before we call the next witness, we wanted to read some stipulations into the record. And Mr. Williamson is one of the AUSAs. So, the judge, all right. Okay, thank you. It is hereby stipulated to and agreed by and between the United States of America, by and through its attorney, John R. Lausch, Jr., the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, and defendants Robert Sylvester Kelly, Darrell McDavid, and Milton Brown, that the following facts are and should be considered to be true and accurate. Okay, stipulation. Government exhibits 301, 302, 303, and 304 are true and accurate copies of transcripts of proceedings before a special grand jury of the Circuit Court of Cook County that occurred on the dates reflected in the transcripts. Stipulation. On or about June 5, 2002, a grand jury of the Circuit Court of Cook County, Illinois, returned an indictment charging defendant Robert Kelly in the case of People of the United States of Illinois versus Robert Kelly, 02 CR 14952, with 21 counts of CP relating to Video 1 and Rashona. The case was tried to a jury beginning on May 20th, 2008 and ended on June 13th, 2008. Robert Kelly was acquitted on the charges. Okay, stick a pin here because I am going to go back once again to Geronda Pace and her birthday and her age at the time that she was at that trial, and she claimed that it was in April. Okay, and that it lasted through June, but they're saying May 20th and it ended June 13th. So anyway, so it says from approximately June 5th, 2002 through June 13th, 2008, Robert Kelly was released on bond and was not in custody while the Cook County case was pending. Stipulation. Government Exhibit 305 is a true and accurate copy of the June 5, 2002 indictment in the case of the People of the State of Illinois versus Robert Kelly, 02 CR 14952. Stipulation. Government Exhibit 306 is a true and accurate copy of the statement of disposition in the case of People of the State of Illinois. Okay, Judge, okay, that concludes that. Miss, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Oh, this old man don't go retire. And when you testify, you may remove your mask. Then Rashona says, thank you. Okay, Miss Appleton, you can question the witness. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Rashona, government's witness sworn, direct examination, Miss Appleton. Good morning. Good morning. Now, normally I would ask that you state and spell your name, your first and last name, but we're not going to do that today because you are testifying under a pseudonym. Is that correct? Correct. And what's the pseudonym? Jane. Now, child, is she trying to be Azrael? Because wasn't Azrael Jane in the Northern District case? Not the Northern District, the Eastern District of New York case. Like, come on, y'all. These people are crazy. Okay, so Rashona, you could please tell us the month and the year in which you were born. September 1984. And you may need to move just a little bit closer. And again, can you tell us the month and the year you were born? September 1984. And how old are you now? 37. Please tell the jurors where you were raised in Oak Park, Illinois. And can you please tell the jurors a little bit about your educational background? I went to junior high at Emerson. I did homeschool, and I did high school at OPRF. Okay, what are some of the activities that you participated in while you were in high school? Basketball. When did you start playing basketball? I started playing in about 6th grade. Did you continue on through junior high and in high school? Yes. Did you take team photos with your teams over the various years where you guys were wearing uniforms? Yes. I'm showing you what's been previously marked as Government's Exhibit 116, and you should see that on the screen up in front of you. Do you see that there? Yes. And what is Government's Exhibit 116? That's my high school photo when I was a sophomore, I believe. And yeah, that was me, a part of the basketball team. And you said you were in sophomore, so about 10th grade, yes. And you were approximately 15 or 16 years old in the photo, correct? Okay, Miss Appleton, Your Honor, the government would move to admit Government's Exhibit 116 and publish to the jury. Any objection? Bonjean, no objection. Brindley, no objection. Okay, it's admitted. You may publish. So Government's Exhibit 116 admitted into evidence. Okay, and again, this is your basketball photo, correct. And although it's whited out right there, your number and the team's name is on that shirt. Is that right? Yes. And when did you stop playing basketball? My junior year in high school. Now, you mentioned that you were homeschooled at some point during your educational career. Is that right? Yes. And why were you homeschooled? Because I was in a music group. So we're not going to mention the actual name of the music group during your testimony, but we'll just refer to it as a music group. Is that okay with you? Okay, why are they acting like the world don't know all this stuff already? Well, the world don't know, but anyway, okay. For the Cause is the name of the group. So that's fine. How many members were in the group? A total of 4. And who were they? Without naming their names, but just generally, who were they? My cousins. And whose side of the family? Technically, both sides of our family. So on your both mom and your dad's side? Okay, was your family musically inclined? Yes. Including your parents? Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about what they did in terms of music? So my mom used to sing in a music group when she was younger, and my dad was a musician. And you said was a musician. Did your father pass away? Yes. And when was that? About a year ago. Rishona, can you tell us how the group came together? Yes. So it was a group of cousins. My uncle actually started the group. He saw potential in us. We were writers. My cousin, they were musicians and rappers. Okay, how old were you when the group came together? I was about 12. What type of music was the group creating? It was like positive hip-hop music, like Christian hip-hop. And what was your role in the group? I was like the lead rapper. Did you also do some singing as well? Yes. Did the group have a CD? We did. How well did the CD do? How well did the public react to the CD? It was very successful overseas. So we were really popular, and we went like platinum and gold in in Germany and Europe. And that was overseas, right? Oh God, correct. In the United States, how was it? Same or a little bit less? A little bit less. We were popular locally, but not as much as we were out of the country. And where did this group perform here locally? Here, meaning in the United States. It would just be like local churches or festivals. Okay, I'm showing you what's been previously marked as Government's Exhibit 118. Do you see that on the screen here in front of you? Yes. And what is Government's Exhibit 118? Okay, that's a photo of me during the group. I'm pretty sure we took that for like a magazine or something out of the country. Yeah, did the group from time to time take professional photos to be used for promotion and CDs and things like that? Yes. And is this one of those photos? It is. And how old were you in that photograph? I was about 13. Okay, Your Honor, the government moves to admit Government's Exhibit 118 and to publish to the jury. Is there an objection? Hearing none, it's admitted, and you may publish Government's Exhibit 118 admitted into evidence. Okay, so again, this was one of the photos that you took as part of the music group. Is that right? Yes. And did you use this in promotional activities? Is that what it was for? Correct. Okay, how was that time for you when you were touring with your music group and playing with your cousins? It was an amazing time. We were very successful. We got to travel to a lot of different countries, and I was living within my dream, so I was very happy. And who did you travel with when you all went overseas? My uncle. So you had adult chaperones that were with you and your cousins. Yes. I didn't ask this before. How old were your cousins in relation to you? They were a couple years older than me. So if I was over 13, between like 15 and 17. And during the tours, that's how it started this. That's when you were doing homeschooling? Is that right? Yes. Did you also do some homeschooling when you were not on tour, when you were back here in the States? Yes. And why was that? Because we were still traveling. So even though we might not have been like on tour, we could go over to work on a CD or be called for a show. So I didn't enroll back in school. Okay. At the group's peak, did the group sign like a recording deal or a recording arrangement? Yes. And how did that make you feel when that happened? It made me feel accomplished. It made me feel happy. And how did you see music? I was very inspired by music. Again, my family was very musically inclined, and it was very therapeutic for me. So that was my perception of music. Okay, did you see it as a career or something you could do for the rest of your life, even for money? Yes, that was my goal. Are you familiar with a person named Robert Kelly? Yes. And how did you first come to know Mr. Kelly? Through my aunt Stephanie. Did you know who he was before you personally met him? Yes. And how did you know of who he was? As an artist through his music and his success. What kind of music was he creating? R&B music. And how was it that you heard the music or saw it? Through television, radio. The music. His music would be routinely played on the radio? Correct. And what about on TV? Like, where would you see him on TV? Well, in like award shows or just different video channels. What about, did you see like recordings from live concerts and such or on TV? Yes, and you had mentioned that you had occasion to personally meet Mr. Kelly. Is that right? Yes. Can you move a little bit closer to the mic? Oh, sure. I think you can actually move it towards you too, the actual mic. There you go. Did a member of your family have a closer connection to Mr. Kelly? Yes. And who was that family member? Stephanie. And what side of the family? How was Stephanie related to you? She's related to my mom. So she's your mom's sister. Sister? Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about Stephanie in a moment. But when we were talking about how you knew of Mr. Kelly, did you know him to have a stage name? Yes, before you met him. And what was that? R. Kelly. And was he referred to as R. Kelly when you first met him? Yes. I'd like to direct your attention to the first time you met Robert Kelly. So I'm directing your attention to 1996 and 1997. How old were you during those years? I was about 12 or 13. And can you please explain the circumstances around that first meeting? He came to a gospel concert at my church. And you said it was a gospel concert? Was he performing there? No, he was just coming as a guest. And at the time, did you know that he was going to be there at that event? No. So was your music group performing at the event? No. Okay, what were people's reaction when he showed up? They were very excited. How so? Can you describe like the energy in the room, like what happened when he walked in? It was just a lot of wows. It was a lot of whispers. It was just like a different energy. There was attention drawn to his presence. And again, he wasn't there to perform or anything, was he? No. Why were people having those? Did you have that reaction when he walked in? I did. Why? I was excited. I knew who he was as an artist. I knew his level of success. So I was, as a performer, as a person who is aspiring to be in the music industry, I was just excited like every other fan in the room. You said his level of success, and you said you were a fan. Like, are you talking about like superstar level? Yes. What about him then made him seem like a superstar? His music, just he was famous. Seeing him on TV, hearing him on the radio, his level of success at the time. And so at this church concert, did you get to personally meet him? Yes. And how did that happen? It was like backstage, or when the concert was over, my aunt took me over to where he was and she introduced us. Did you get a chance to have any conversation with him? Yes, I was just explaining, how excited I was that he was there. It was pretty general like that. So then, when was the next time that you met Mr. Kelly in person? The next time I remember meeting him in person was when my group was performing, and he came to our show that we were having in Chicago. And about how much time had passed between the first meeting and the second one. I can't remember exactly, but it probably was like a few months, weeks to months. Okay, not years. No, weeks or months. Okay, did you know that he would be there this time at your performance? Did you know that in advance? Yes. And how did you know that? Through my Aunt Stephanie. And so when he showed up this time, what were people's reactions when he came into that concert? It was the same as before. The crowd was a little bit more youthful, so there was a lot of more morale or excitement and attention drawn to him. Again, so at this time, were you aspiring to be a musician yourself? Yes. And how did you feel about Mr. Kelly being able to observe you perform as an artist? I was very excited. And how did the performance go? It went really well. Everything was as I expected it to be. So then after the performance, did you get to meet Mr. Kelly face to face? Yes. Can you explain that? How that interaction went? When we got done, I went to the vehicle with my aunt and we were discussing the show. He was telling me how great of a job I did, how the concert went well, and just giving me like pointers on how I handled the stage. And that was pretty much it. What did it mean to you to have the opportunity to meet such a superstar at this point in your own music career? I felt successful. I felt happy. Did you receive any feedback from Mr. Kelly about how the performance was, in addition to what you said just now? Just that was pretty much it. That was just the general interaction. He did give me, Banjin, I'm sorry, can you speak up a little bit into the witness? Sure, I'm sorry. Yes, I did receive feedback. He told me I did a great job. He gave me pointers on how I handled the stage, what he thought went well, and it was just him just critiquing, how the performance went. And how did that make you feel? It made me feel accomplished. It made me feel happy that such a successful person was, saying I was gifted. So I was excited. Now, before we go further, I'd like to ask you, Your Honor, well, first I'll ask you, if you were to see Robert Kelly today, would you be able to recognize him? Yes. Your Honor, I'd ask if you can instruct everyone in the courtroom to remove their mask. Remove mask, please. Okay, everyone in the courtroom. Your Honor. Okay, can you please take a look around the courtroom and let me know first if you do see Robert Kelly in the courtroom? Yes. And can you describe an article of clothing that he is wearing and where he is located in the courtroom? A navy blue blazer. And where is he located in the courtroom? On the left side. Is he behind me? Yes. Seated at a table? Correct. Can you further describe any? So stipulated, it's Mr. Kelly. Y'all know that was Banjin, right? So the court, the judge, okay. All right, stipulate, she identified him. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. So did you see, okay, I believe everyone can put their masks back on. Did you start to see Mr. Kelly more often after the concert where you performed? Yes. How and where did you start to see him more? I would see him at his basketball gym, at the studio, or restaurants. And would you be with Stephanie at this time? Yes. Banjin. Object to the leading court. Okay. Don't lead, give her, ask open questions. Thank you. Who would you be with at this time? My Aunt Stephanie. And how old were you during this time frame? About 13 or 14. Why was, you said you were with Stephanie at these times when you saw him at the studio, at the gym, and restaurants, things like that. Yes. Why was Stephanie around him so much? Because they were working together musically. Did they also have a personal relationship? Yes. A romantic relationship? Yes. And from whom did you learn that they had this personal romantic relationship? Stephanie. Were you and Stephanie close? Yes. How close would you describe that relationship? We were very close. I really looked up to her. I admired what she was doing musically, and I kind of consider her like, my aunt, but like a really close friend as well. What would you do while you had mentioned that you were seeing them both. You were seeing, when you would see Mr. Kelly, you were with Stephanie at the studio. Is that one of the places you said? Yes. And when you were at the studio, first of all, what studio are you talking about? Do you recall the names of the studios? BASE Productions and Chicago Tracks. Those are two separate places, as you recall? Correct. Okay, what would you do while you were with Stephanie and Mr. Kelly at the studio? I would be there just kind of like hanging out, watching them make music or doing producing or her recording. Did you spend more time at one of those studios or the other? I would say I spent most of the time at Chicago Tracks. About how many times in your lifetime, so not just that time, but in your lifetime, have you been in that Chicago Tracks studio? Many times, like tens of, or the hundreds. Can you describe the studio, please? Yes. So when you pull up to the studio, there's a silver gate. There was rock gravel. There was like you called to get into the gate. There's a black door. You walk inside of the studio. There was like a little customer service area where the person who opens the door was. There was rooms, stairways, and recording rooms. What type of rooms did you say there were? Lounges and recording rooms. What's a lounge room? The lounges were where people would sleep or where people would wait before they went into sessions. And can you describe to the jury what the studio is or what it looks like, the studio rooms? Okay, there was a large area that had a bathroom in it with couch, TV, refrigerator. There was one that was like an office space with chairs, desk, file cabinet. And the studio rooms themselves, what were those like? What did they look like? The studio rooms, yes, the recording took place. Is that where recording took place, in the studio rooms? Yes. So there were like vocal booths. There were vocal booths and like other lounges. Yeah. So before your testimony today, did you review some photographs that you had identified as photos of Chicago Track Studio? I did, yes. And where was the studio located? On Larrabee. Larrabee. Okay. Is that in Chicago? I'm going to hand these to you. Now, I'm showing you a group of photographs. They are government exhibits 114. Does that say 114? Yes. 114A through T. Because please take a moment to look through those photographs and let me know when you're finished, please. Sure. I'm done. Thank you. Now, do governments exhibit 114A through T, are those the photographs that you reviewed prior to your testimony that we were just talking about? Yes. And do those photos truly and accurately depict portions of the interior and exterior of Track Studio as it looked during the time frame you were describing, and that's 1996, 1997, when you were 12 and 13 years old? Yes. Okay. Your Honor, the government moves to admit government's exhibit 114A through T and to publish them to the jury. Is there an objection? Bonjean, no objection. Brindley, no objection. No objection. They're admitted. You may publish them. Okay, government exhibits 114A through T admitted into evidence. Okay, Miss Appleton continues. I'm showing you what's been marked as 114A. Do you see that there? Yes. What is depicted in 114A? That's the entry to the Chicago track studio. What's depicted in this photo? That's the call box to enter the gate. And did you have to use that call box every time you were trying to go inside the actual building? Yes. What's depicted in Government's Exhibit 114C? That's the doorway to get into the studio. So after you go through the gate, then you get to this door. Yes. What's depicted in 114D? That's the gate of the studio. And so the main entrance is on the other side of this. Showing you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 114A. What's depicted here? I'm sorry, 114E. That is like the hallway, and it looks like the office area of the studio. So the doorway is opening into what room? The office. We will get closer in. What's depicted in 114F? That's the inside of the office space. And this, is it as it appears in the time frame at the time when you were visiting Chicago tracks? Yes. What is depicted in Government's Exhibit 114G? That is another angle of the office space. What are those things that are on the walls there? Those are different albums that were very successful. And you're saying they were very successful? How do you know that? Is there anything in the photos that, that's how it is when it's like a platinum multi-million-dollar sales record? Are you familiar with what this record or album that is depicted there? Yes. What is that? That's the 12-play album. Can you take that down for 1 second? Showing you what's been previously marked as Government's Exhibit 120. Do you see that there on the screen in front of you? Yes. What is Government's Exhibit 120? That's the album cover of the 12-play album. Okay, that's a blown up picture of what was you just identified. Okay, picture of what was you just identified on the wall in the offices. Okay, yes. Okay, Your Honor, the government will move to admit Government's Exhibit 120. Any objection? Bonjean, no objection. Brindley, no objection. Now, I don't know where Milton Brown and his attorney is, because ain't nobody asking their opinion at this point. So, court admitted. You may publish Government's Exhibit number 120 admitted into evidence. So, Appleton continues. All right, there we go. What is depicted here in Government's Exhibit 120? That is the album cover of 12 Play. And that's that album that you saw on the wall in the office. Yes. Is this how Mr. Kelly looked when you met him? Yes. Meaning his shape and build. Correct. Did he have a bald head when he met you? I'm sorry. When you first met him for the first time? Yes. Was his hair always bald, or no? He would wear it bald, and sometimes he would wear it like in a fade. So going back to tracks. All right. So we left off on Government's Exhibit I believe. Now we're on Government's Exhibit 114H. What's depicted in Government's Exhibit 114H? This is another angle of the office space. And again, there are other albums. The album 12 Play is up. Yes. In other places in the office. Yes. Showing you what's Government's Exhibit 114I. What's depicted in 114I? Okay, this is another angle of the office. Are these photos here? Are you aware of? Yes. Okay, what this is here? Yes, those are different album covers that were also very successful. Again, what's this? What is depicted here? This is the lounge area. Is it near the office or a part of the office that we just saw? It's connecting, yes. Again, that's depicted here, 114K. Okay, the office is in the background, and this is a part of the lounge space. And whose lounge space and whose office were those? Robert's. And when you say Robert, and you can refer to him as Robert in your testimony, that's fine. But when you say Robert, you mean the defendant, Robert Kelly. Is that right? Yes. showing you what's been marked as Government's Exhibit 114L, what's depicted there. That's the lounge area. Again, off of, this is Robert Kelly's lounge area, yes, and office, showing you what's marked as Exhibit 114M, what's depicted there on the walls and in the furniture. Okay, there's remote controls. That's the couch. That was in Robert's lounge, and well as different accomplishments that are hanging from different album covers or music that he produced. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but is this a couch that was in his lounge that you just mentioned in the other photo? Yes, Government's Exhibit 114O. What's depicted here? That's the lounge space, and that's Robert's lounge space and the bathroom. And when you were at the studio during this time, 1996, 1997, did you use this lounge area? Were you up here in this room and use this bathroom? Yes. What's depicted in Government's Exhibit 114P? That's the TV that was in the lounge as well as the bathroom area. And what's this in 114Q? The bathroom in the lounge. And what's this in 114R? The shower that was in the lounge in the bathroom. And what's depicted in 114S? This is another space that was a part of the studio that was used for working out or practicing or another lounge area. And finally, 114T. That is the office space. All right. So turning back to when you would visit the studios with Stephanie, you had mentioned that you were watching them do their thing in terms of making music. Is that right? Yes. And how was it for you to have those experiences? It was really nice to see them working and collaborating. And what were your interactions with Mr. Kelly at this time in the studio? And again, this time we're talking about 1996-97, when you first started going to the studio. I was just going there and watching him as an artist, watching my aunt as an artist, and they were just producing music, and that was it at the time. Would you have conversations with Mr. Kelly? Yes. And what was the general nature of those conversations? What would you talk about? Well, we talk about basketball. We would talk about music, my goals as an artist, or how I was doing in school. It was general conversation like that. About how many times a week were you visiting Chicago Track Studio again around this time period early on? Maybe twice a week. Now, during this time period, again, when you were 12, 13 years old, what, if anything, did Stephanie instruct you to do to help foster a closer relationship between you and Mr. Kelly? Well, she told me that I should ask him to be my godfather and that I should sit on his lap and I should rub his head and ask him if he would play that role in my life. And did you do that? Yes. And at that time, did you want to have a closer relationship with Mr. Kelly? Yes. And for what purpose at that time? He was just a person that I looked up to. I was very inspired by him, his talent. He was fun. We had a lot in common, basketball, music, so I thought it was a good idea at the time. And where did this happen, where you asked him to be your godfather? In the office at Chicago Track Studio. In that office, the pictures that we just went through, yes. What was his response? He looked up at me and he kind of chuckled a little bit and he said, yes. Did you have other godparents at this time that were named by your parents? Yes. What, if anything, did you tell your parents about you asking Mr. Kelly to be your godfather? I just let them know that I have a new godfather. Obviously, they knew who it was. I let them know Robert agreed to be my godfather. And, they thought it was cool. And you said your parents obviously knew who he was. How do you know they knew who he was? They knew who he was through Aunt Stephanie, and at the time she was recording with him, so from her being musically inclined and working with him and signing the record deal, that's how they became familiar with him. And was your father working with Mr. Kelly at this point? No. But later he would come to work for Mr. Kelly. Yes. Correct. Okay. So you talked a little bit to us about what your interactions with Mr. Kelly were before he became your godfather. After that conversation, did your interactions with Mr. Kelly change? Yes. So first, let's talk about the conversations, the things that you guys would say to one another. How did the way that he spoke to you change? Banjin, objection on foundation grounds, Lennon Weber. What do you want? You want the date or the time? Well, I don't like how he talking to Banjin. Oh, now that left my dog, lost my place. Okay. He said, what do you want? You want the date or the time? So Banjin said, well, just generally some time period. All right, the place and time, establish what we're talking about with these conversations. Yes, Your Honor. So in the time frame after he asked you to be his godfather, okay, that's the time frame we're talking about, okay? So in the time frame after he asked you to be his godfather, he didn't ask her to be his godfather, she asked him. Okay, maybe it's a typo. No, because it should have been after you asked. Okay, I'm confused. And I don't know why Banjin didn't correct this. Okay, and how old were you during that time? I was 13. Okay, so when you were 13 years old, did the way that Mr. Kelly spoke to you, speak to you in conversations after he became your godfather change? Yes. And about what's the time frame between the time he asked you to be his godfather and the time that these conversations started to change? Why is Banjin not correcting her? Because they low-key trying to make it seem like he asked her, could he be her godfather? And nobody seems to be catching this. So she replied, weeks. And you were 13 years old, correct? Yes. So what was the nature of the way in which the conversations changed? It became sexual. How did it become sexual? Through his tone of voice and just the things he might say. And how did they start first in person or on the phone? On the phone. And can you explain to us, what do you mean by things became sexual specifically? We would spend a lot of time on the phone together, and eventually he might ask me a question like, what color panties are you wearing? Now, who asking a 13-year-old what color panties they wearing? And somebody had posted, oh my God, was it Ronnie C that made that post on one of my prior videos? It was like, at 13, she probably was wearing cotton drawers. She wasn't wearing no panties. And so I was like, yeah, you got a point there. So anyway, the lady said, when you say things of that nature, were there other things that he would ask or tell you that was going on with him during the call? Banjin, I'm going to object to the foundation. Is it a call, specific call? She wants to know, I guess, on the telephone, or I guess you said it's on the call. So the question was, what are some of the other things that he would say that you said that were sexual in nature, that were different in the way that he started to talk to you? About my breast growing, like I said, the content of my undergarments, like my color of my panties, or if I need to be wearing bras and things like that. Did the conversation on the phone progress to something more sexual on the phone? Yes. What? Phone sex. Okay, when you say phone sex, what do you mean? He would start asking me different questions sexually, and he would let me know that he was jacking off. Okay, girl, you 13 years old. Why you didn't hang up the phone on him? Like, why was you continuing this phone call and acting like this was normal? Okay, and you said that about how long after the conversation about him being your godfather until these more sexual conversations occur? About how much time? It was weeks. And did this type of talk continue in person? Yes. Now, okay, first of all, what was her parents when she was on the phone having these sexually explicit phone calls? And I'm just trying to think, 13-year-old me. First of all, I wouldn't have been talking to no grown man on the phone, point blank, period. And if I was talking to a grown man on the phone and he started asking me questions like that, I would be like, oh, like, like I just don't understand the mentality. Like if I was a juror, I would be sitting there thinking about myself at 13 and been like, this would have never, ever, ever happened. Like me at 13 doing this stuff, engaging in conversations like that, it wouldn't have never happened because I would have been like, oh, you nasty. And I probably would have hung up the phone and that would have been the end of that. And I wouldn't have wanted to talk to him anymore, superstar or no superstar. I mean, like this girl seemed like she was just too eager and too willing, like this was something that her and Sparkle had already discussed and talked about, and Sparkle maybe told her like, this how you gonna get on, this how your career is going to be built, because you're just not going to tell me that this girl at 13 years old is, first of all, hanging out at the studio, and we done already determined that the parents didn't work for him at this time. So you always at the studio with Sparkle. Where was Sparkle when you and him was having these conversations, getting to know each other? Because I'm thinking if Sparkle was at the studio, she should have been working on her music and he should have been in the sound studio directing the music. So I'm unsure when these conversations was taking place. And then he calling you on the phone. Girl, did you have a cell phone that belonged to you? Was it your cell phone? Was he calling the house phone? Like, how did your mom and daddy not know who you was talking to on that phone and what were y'all talking about? Like, make it make sense. Anyway. And did this type of talk continue in person? Yes. And where would these conversations happen? Again, you were 13 or 14 at the time, correct? Yes. Banji, I'm sorry. What was the question? Where would these conversations occur? It would occur at the studio, or if we were riding in the car over the phone. Now we done got in the car. Child, where was y'all going in the car, and where were your parents? Was Sparkle in the car with you? We need more details, okay? So did conversations about things that were sexual in nature that you described earlier, did they become more than just talk? Yes. When did they become more than just talk? Around the age of 14. Can you tell us about the first time that the talk became more than just talk? It became physical? Yes, we were in the studio and we were like watching TV and chilling. Okay, so you 13-year-olds, okay, chilling with a grown-ass man. Okay. Was Sparkle in the room chilling with y'all? Where was Sparkle when all this was going on? So after maybe a session had ended, and it began with like rubbing and touching, can you be a little bit more specific about how the encounter happened, how it went down? Okay. So we were sitting in the office area of the studio on the couch, talking, watching TV, and obviously we had began phone sex at the time. So it would start out like a regular conversation like we would be having during phone sex. And this particular time, it became more physical with touching of the breast and him rubbing on. He was rubbing on your genitalia area. Banjin, object to the leading. Yeah, don't lead. Have her describe it. Now, y'all listening to this know good and dang gone well that none of this is adding up. None of this is making a lick of sense. Okay? And none of this is making sense whatsoever to me. Because how did she get, so if she was going to the studio with Sparkle, where was Sparkle when all this was going on? And if she wasn't going there with Sparkle, how was she getting there? Who was taking her there? Who was picking her up from there? Okay, so where was he rubbing? He was rubbing in my vaginal area as well as on himself. He was rubbing himself, yes. Where? On what part of his body? On his genital area. Okay, were other people around? Let me back up. You said this happened in the studio. Is that correct? Yes. At Chicago Tracks? Yes. And was it in one of the rooms that we saw in those pictures? Correct. Did you say this had happened on the couch? Is that what you said? Yes. And it was the couch that was in those pictures that we saw? Yes. And what time of the day was this, if you recall? It was like The wee hours of the night, like after a studio session? Okay, why weren't you home? Okay. Were other people around, meaning in that room or in that general vicinity? No. How is it that you were able to be with him at night? You said this happened at the wee hours of the night. Is that what your testimony was? Yes. Okay, how was it that you were able to be with him at night? Well, by him becoming my godfather and me spending time around him casually, like at the gym, my parents felt comfortable enough at that time let me stay there because I was there for the sessions. And it was like normal for me to be there watching him produce. And it was just when he became my godfather, I was able to do that without my aunt being involved. Just throw the parents in the trash can. Okay, just throw them away. This man is at a music studio with a whole bunch of grumpy people hanging out, recording music, and you just let your daughter mosey on in and hang out with these grown folks that probably was drinking and smoking weed and everything else. And it was okay because he was the godfather. First of all, you didn't ask that man to be your child's godfather. So, okay. Wow. And Sparkle wasn't saying nothing. Sparkle was okay with the fact that her sister was allowing her daughter to go on up to the studio in the wee hours of the night and hang the hell out. Okay? Make it make sense. So your aunt wasn't around during this encounter that you're talking about that happened on the couch in his studio, or in his office space. Correct. Was Mr. Kelly married at the time? Yes. Did your parents know that you were in the studio at that time? Banjin. Objection to what other people knew unless she was a first. Overruled. She can answer. Can you repeat the question for me, please? Sure. I can rephrase. Did you tell your parents you were at the studio at that time? No, they would think that I was going back to the house as with the family. And when you say the family, who are you talking about? His wife. His wife, meaning Robert Kelly's wife? Yes. After that first sexual encounter, what happened on the couch there in his office lounge? Did things progress sexually? Yes. How and where? They started to progress vaginally. We started penetration, and that was at the George Street house. Okay, before there was penetration, and you're talking about vaginal penetration, sexual intercourse. Is that right? Yes. Okay, before that, were there other sexual acts that you engaged in before getting to that point? Yes. Can you please describe those acts and where they would occur? They would occur at the studio or at the George Street house, and it was through like different acts being filmed. Okay, so let's back up a little bit and talk about the progression of time. So you were, again, this was around the time you were 13 or 14, correct? Banjin. Objection. She testified till she was 14. Excuse me. Leading is inappropriate. Oh, okay. All right. I guess she wasn't. Be more specific. 13 or 14. What age are you talking about? Yes, Your Honor. Okay. When you were 14. So we're talking about when you were 14 years old. And Mr. Kelly was engaging in sex acts when you were 14 years old. You explained that at some point it turned to vaginal intercourse. But before that, there were other acts. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And so what type of sex acts were intercourse? It would be like oral sex, kissing, hugging, sucking on breasts, sucking on, oral. Okay. How would you know what to do with him sexually? That's what I want to know. Because he would tell me what to do. Were you familiar or had you heard of the request that he was asking of you? No. Girl, honey, you were too experienced, okay, to be talking about you had never heard of none of this stuff. And why were you so willing to oblige? So you mentioned that, so at where were these acts happening? Again, before there was intercourse. At the studio and at the George Street house. How old were you when he began having intercourse with you? 15. And how do you know? How is it that you know you were 15? Because that's when I lost my virginity. Now, you've told us that you would have these encounters at the George Street house and the studio. Now, how was it that you would meet up with Mr. Kelly to engage in these acts? Can you repeat the question for me, please? Yes, I can. Yes. You had mentioned that you had sexual acts with Mr. Kelly at the studio and at his home at 1010 George Street, right? Is that correct? Yes. And you weren't living at either of those places, correct? No. At this time, again, 14, 15 years old, correct? So how is it, boy, she gonna keep throwing that lower number in there, ain't she? Oh my gosh. So how is it that you all would hook up and connect to meet up to have sex or engage in sex acts? Usually I would go to the basketball gym with my parents or my aunt still, and we would leave there, maybe go eat or go back to the studio. And then it would be like a weekend situation where my parents knew that I was going to be going to my godparents' house for the weekend. So they would pretty much drop me off and then leave. Oh, now it's your godparents. Before it was your godfather. So now Drea then agreed to be your godmama, girl. Like, what, we missed that part of the conversation. When did you meet Drea? When did y'all have this conversation about her becoming your godmother? And when we gonna get to the part where you were supposed to be the babysitter? Anyway, so okay, and how would you communicate with Mr. Kelly in advance of these times where you would meet up? It would be over the phone, and I would just ask him if it was okay to come over for the weekend, and he would say yes. And he would say, you can meet me here, whether it be the studio or the gym or whatever was pretty much happening at the time. How would the invitations go? Would he sometimes invite you to come over, and you would sometimes ask to come over? Yes. And were you meeting up so that you could engage in these acts? Yes. Would you discuss that on the phone? No. Where would you say that your parents would drop you off? Banjin, I'm going to object to we're talking about, I don't know if one minute she's talking about 13, 14, 15. There's no foundation, and there needs to be some foundation. Your Honor, we were talking about when she was 14. Banjin, no, we weren't. She was 15. Okay, leading up, I was finishing my sentence. Leading up to when she was 15. See how they trying to play with them numbers? I hope the jury pays attention here. So when y'all was doing the do, all right. Okay, we haven't gone. That's the time frame we're in right now. Okay, you're asking her whether she was 14 or 15. Make sure. I think that's what we need to know. Yes. When you ask her specific acts, yes, Your Honor. So we had talked about intercourse occurred when you were 15. Prior to that, when you were 14, he was engaging in oral and other acts, right? Yes. So between the time you were 14 up until you turned 18 years old, was Mr. Kelly engaging in sex acts? Yes. Including oral, correct. Sexual intercourse, yes. Is that right? What were some of the places that Mr. Kelly would engage you in sexual acts during that time period? At 14 up until you were 18. At the studio, on the bus, at the George Street house. Are there any other places that this occurred between the time you were 14 to the time you were 18? Hotels. Okay, where would those hotels be? Different places, Florida, New York, different states. About what was the frequency of the acts? Very frequent. Okay, let's talk about in terms of like times a day or times during a week. Banjin, okay, I'm going to object. Again, is this between the age of 14 to 18, that entire 4-year period? Okay, between the ages of 14 and 18, yes, Your Honor. She has knowledge of what happened to her during those years. She can testify. All right, ask her that. Well, go ahead. Objection is overruled. Go ahead and ask her the questions. About how many times did Mr. Kelly engage you in intercourse during that period? Okay, he didn't engage her in intercourse at 14. He didn't stop playing. So Bunjin, okay, I'm going to object. The intercourse started at 15, so the question is misleading. I would ask for a proper foundation. This is the details are important, at least they are to us. But then the judge, I believe it was 15 to 18. Yes, from 15 to 18. How many times? Child, innumerable amount of times. I'm sorry, like uncountable, a lot of times. Are we talking about tens or hundreds of times? Hundreds. So is it fair to say you can't recall every single instance and every single occurrence? Is that correct? Yes. You had mentioned just now in your testimony that between the ages of 14 and 18, when you were engaged, should have changed it back to 14 again. That happened at Chicago Track Studio. Is that correct? Yes. Those photos that we just saw earlier of Chicago Track Studio, did intercourse occur in any of those rooms? Yes. Which ones? All of them. The office, where there was a massage table? Yes. And did acts occur on that massage table? Yes. And the room, which was, I believe, did you say it was a lounge where the couch was? Yes. In that room as well? Yes. Now, when you strike that, did Mr. Kelly ever provide you with alcohol during the times that you were together? Yes. Bunjin, objection to the foundation again. Your Honor, again, she was there. She can testify to what happened to her. If you would like the time frame, we can zero in on that. It's just foundation, Judge. A little bit of foundation. This is years of time period. The judge, she wants to know when, I guess. Pinpoint the date when they started drinking alcohol, I guess would be a good way to start. Okay, appending. The judge said, can you pinpoint the time when you began first giving you the alcohol? 14. What effect, if any, did the alcohol have for you? I'm sorry, can you repeat that? What effect, if any, did the alcohol have on you? I don't remember a lot. I used to consume a lot of it during that time, so it affected me. It helped me loosen up. It took me away from the moment. Now this when y'all know that they've been rehearsing these questions and answers with her, because child, when you was 14, you didn't know nothing about drinking alcohol and it would take you away from the moment. What was it trying to take you away from the moment for? Because if you needed to be taken away from the moment, then you knew that what you was doing was dead wrong. Anyway, so during the time you were between 14 and 18 and you were engaging in sex acts, what, if anything, were you shown during acts or leading up to acts? I was shown other porn tapes. When you say porn, what do you mean? Can you describe what you were shown? It would just be on the television, other, porn going on television while he and I was engaging in activity. And if you can recall, who were you able to ever identify any people that were in those porn images? Yes, some of the people I knew, without saying, did you know the females and the males or just the males? I knew both. Okay, who were one of the people? Bunjin, object to leading. Go ahead. Who were some of the people that were depicted in Judge? That's not who, wait a minute. Bunjin, I'm going to object to the relevance of who was depicted as well, Judge. She started to lead, objected. Okay, start the question with who, I guess would. Okay, who was depicted in the videos of porn that you saw that Mr. Kelly would show when you were engaging in acts? Bunjin, objection, relevance, Judge, overruled. And then Rashonda said Robert. Okay, so now at some point, when again, during that time period when you were 14, 15 years old, did Mr. Kelly ask you to invite your friends to engage in activity? Yes. What, if anything, would he say to encourage this? He would just kind of like, make an advance, like, what's up with this person or that person? Like, how would you feel if they were included in or, our activity, or he would like kind of crush on them a little bit. Okay, he would kind of crush on them. Is that what you said? Yes. What does that mean? Just like be kind of flirty with whatever remark he was making towards that person to me. What was your response? I told him, yes, I would basically pitch the idea. Okay, were two of these friends that you pitched the idea to Pinky and Brittany? Yes. And now Pinky and Brittany are not their real names. Is that correct? Correct. Those are their pseudonyms. Yes. Is Pinky your age? Yes. Okay, when was the first time Mr. Kelly engaged you and Pinky in acts at the same time? How old were you? About 14 or 15. And where did this occur? At the George Street house. Okay, hold up. First of all, how did he know Pinky and Brittany to even be asking her to invite them over? Had he met them before? Had she shown pictures of them? It's like, how did he just magically say, hey, go ask Pinky to come over here, or go ask Brittany to come? Can we get some foundation? Bunjin, you slipping. You need to be objecting and asking these questions. Like, when did he meet them? What's going on here? So anyway, so then Appenting says, and can you explain in detail that encounter? So we had went to the studio and we ended up going to the George Street house. It was a weekend and we led up to it by having like different phone conversations or different like flirty encounters if we would be around each other. And when we were at the George Street house, we started engaging in activity all together. What, girl? And at this point, was it the first instance? Was it intercourse? It was intimate, yes. At that time, we were engaging in intercourse, yes. Okay, so then you wasn't 14 to 15, you was 15. Oh, Jesus. So when you say intercourse, do you mean actually vaginal intercourse or oral sex and fondling and things like that? Yes, all of that. Okay, after that time, did you have multiple encounters together with Mr. Kelly and Pinky? Yes. And how old were you? I was probably like 14 and 16. Can we get these ages together? Just all over the place. Okay. And so when the events occurred, if they were prior to 15, were they intercourse or were they other acts? I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? So when the acts occurred, when you were prior to the age of 15, was it intercourse or other conduct? Oh, other conduct. And from the time you were around 15 until after, it included intercourse. Is that correct? Yes. And again, about how many times did you have these encounters with Mr. Kelly and Pinky during the time frame when you were between 14 and 18 years old? It was several times. At some point, did these encounters between the three of you, did they stop? Yes. And why did they stop? Because I found out that Pinky was seeing Robin. Okay, now hot ass Pinky done went behind your hot ass back. It was dipping and slipping with a grown man that ain't neither one of y'all have any business being with. Child, what a hot ghetto mess. So, child, she done found that Pinky was slipping and dipping, and so she had to stop being friends with her. Because, girl, how dare I let you meet my grown, too old for me behind man, and then you go behind my back? Girl, okay. So, Appenting probably like, what in the world? So, and when you say seeing Mr. Kelly, what do you mean? Like sexually, like outside of us all being together? She started seeing him separately without my knowledge. Like, girl, who you think you are? So, about how old were you when that happened? About 16. 16, is that what you said? Yes. And you said that Pinky is your same age, so she was about 16 when this happened too. Yes. Now, regarding Brittany, is Brittany your same age or is she older? She's older. Do you recall how old you were when Mr. Kelly engaged you and Brittany in acts at the same time? About 15. Do you recall where the first act occurred? It was at the studio. I'm going to show you a photo. I'm showing you what's been previously marked as Government's Exhibit 108. Do you see 108 there on the screen? Yes. And again, using your pseudonym, who is the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 108? Brittany. And how long, can you explain again? Where did you meet Brittany? We met at school. And so that was back when you were how old? I was about 15. And did you know Brittany, are you still in contact with Brittany from time to time over the years until the age of now? You're 37? Yes. So you would be able to recognize her if you saw her. Yes. And again, who is depicted in the photo? Brittany. And does it truly and accurately depict Brittany? Yes. Okay, Your Honor, the government moves to admit Government's Exhibit 108 and publish to the jury. Okay, no objection. Okay, no objection is admitted. You may publish it. So, Government Exhibit was published. And again, who's depicted in Government's Exhibit 108? Brittany. And again, forgive me, did you say how old you were when Mr. Kelly engaged you and Brittany in acts at the same time? About 15. And how many encounters did you have with Mr. Kelly and Brittany? Multiple. The three of you together? Multiple. Between 5 and 10 or much more than 10? Between 5 and 10. Can you describe the acts that occurred between Brittany, Mr. Kelly, and yourself? It involved vaginal and oral. And where did these acts take place? Usually at the studio. And at some point, did they stop? Yes. Why did they stop? Because similar to the same situation. Okay, what did I say on Twitter? Show me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. So just like your little hot behind friends were eager to jump up and go run around with this grown man, they stabbed you in the back because all of y'all was child, was nobody enticing y'all, was nobody grooming y'all. Y'all heifers was hot in the behind from Jump Street. So, and when you say seeing, what do you mean? Sexually, just hanging out. Your Honor, if we were going to break, now might be a good time. Is this a good time to break? We will break for lunch until 2 o'clock. Okay, so guys, we are going to wrap this up. Child, if I was sitting on the jury, they would kick me off the jury, y'all, because I would be rolling my eyes. I would be shaking my head. I would be like, what in the HELL? I would be looking at the other jurors like, do y'all hear this nonsense? Like, okay, who was raising any of these children? Like, was they raising themselves, child? We be in that, or child, they can't discuss the case when they on break and when they on lunch. They can't discuss the case until it's, everything over with and they go into deliberations. But child, when them deliberations started, I'd be, if the parents ain't in jail, ain't nobody going to jail. Well, he already in jail, but no. This was too casual. This was too easy. This was too simple. All of y'all was a hot mess at that point. All right. I'm going to wrap this up, and then the next video will be after they come back from lunch. So guys, go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.